Hey, this is part 2 in the F-16 Thunderbirds 1/48th scale Revell model. What you can see I'm doing here is I am priming the areas that I put some contour putty on. Some are green, some are white because I switched contour putties midway through while doing these. I like the green a lot better. It works really well. So I'm just spraying this primer coat on here. That way I can see all these lines and I know where to sand when I go to reprime this and when I go to reputty this, so I know exactly what I'm doing. So what you see here, this is the second coat of the nose cone that I'm doing. I'm putting some primer on here. After I show you the nose cone, I'm going to show you all the other sections that I had to put putty on. That way everything would look nice and clean for this model. This right here is the tail section. You can see we had to do a bit of work there. We had to do some work where the engine exhaust is, right here in between the tail fins and the wing. This is a second coat after some sanding. You see that looked really rough right there. We also get that as well, and we'll put another coat of primer on this. There is a little bit of sanding and putty to do on this model. As you can see, I had to do a little bit of it, and it just work with it, and eventually it'll look good when it's done. I am just continuing right now to go over some of these spots. As you can see, there are a few of them. Doesn't take a lot of work, but it does take some time. You do want to get the model somewhat right. I know sometimes I don't always do that, but it's not that big of a deal. So here's another section right here. You can see with a little bit of work and a little bit of elbow grease, it's going to turn out just right in the overall model, and we'll show you that later on. Remember, using the primer does help bring out all the little details that you need to see to make sure you can have to put on other coats of primer and things like that. Add a little bit of a splotch right there, as you can see at the top. This is what it'll look like once it's done. This is under the wing right here where it meets up with the fuselage portion. Had a little too much paint there, but that's okay. Take care of it later on once it dries. And here is the other side of the fuselage where it meets the wing. I did have problem with decals doing that area as well. Just go over everything. Had one spot there. What I'm going to do now is we are going to prime the rest of this model, and I'm going to show you that. So here we go. I'm satisfied with my repairs. We're going to prime the rest of the model. The wheels are not actually glued on here, as I just mentioned. They are just on there because it's easier to prime them with the wheels on, and it makes it easy as well for everything else. I think I took them off when I painted the model white, which I probably should have left them on, but that's okay. This is how it turned out. So we're doing the underside of this, getting everything nice and good with the primer coat. We will get both sides of this plane, at the top, the underside, the right side, the left side, the back. Once you do that, this model will be ready for its white coat. You can see that nose cone actually turned out pretty good right there. That's with all the putty and the sanding that we did and with the primer coats. Now comes the real part of this video where we paint the white coat on here. I apply this in very thin layers. It's really hard to tell, but the more you put on, the more the white shows through. Be careful, I broke that antenna a little bit. It didn't come all the way off, so I got lucky. I just bent it back into place. I think I even put a little glue on there just to make sure it wouldn't go anywhere. So here we go. We continue to paint the white on this. Again, it is hard to see, but as I said earlier, the more you put on, the better it shows through. So just be careful when you do this. It's going to turn out really nice when it's finished, I can promise you that. I am about to apply probably the third or fourth coat of this white. So you can see here it is hard to see, but you can tell that it is turning a better white color when you look at that tail. We're putting more on, a little bit thicker this time, and this white is actually really starting to show through on this model. Again, I don't remember how many coats I put on here, but it was quite a bit, and just the more you do, the more it comes through. I worked really slow with this, going up the wing, all around the rest of this model. We wanted to make it look really good because after all, the whole plane is white, and we want it to really show through after we do everything. Once we have that white coat on, I don't show it, but I do put a clear coat on this, a gloss coat. That way we can apply our decals on this model. Here are the landing gear. We're painting the inside of those doors. Some of those stuff don't need to get painted on there, but I just have it there anyway. You'll have your missiles, things like that. These are your wheel hubs. You want to paint those. There's going to be 3 of those. I just did 1. Here's the second, and of course the third right there. Really easy to paint. They're small. Just get in there with them. We have our canopy. I would advise priming that before you do anything. I didn't prime mine, so it kind of turned out a little off color, but it's not too bad in the long run. So just give this a couple of coats of white, and when it's done, don't forget to take off your masking tape, and we will see how that looks on the model later on. So I'm giving it the second and third coats here. As you can see, the first coat was really light, and you always want to spray everything light first just to give it a little bit of a base coat. We're going to do that right here. After that, we're going to break out our Insignia Red, which maybe you shouldn't paint these right when I do them. This is how I did mine, but you can see I have overspray on the bottom there. So either hold your airbrush a little bit closer, or if you don't want to do that, mask off a little bit better. This is the antenna that always goes onto the front of the nose cone. It's really small. I left it on that piece so I wouldn't lose it. Here are the wheel doors, which are Insignia Blue. I painted these on a piece of tape. It made it a lot easier to do. There are 3 of those. Just nice even strokes with it. Try to get the color right. You want it to match the decals that are going to go on the underside of this model, which is that pretty blue color that you see for the Thunderbirds on the underside of that. As you can see, the color gets darker and darker the more and more I apply on the hair. Be careful, don't put too much on. As you can see, I did that a little bit, but once it does dry, it will probably turn out okay. The next section we have here are these 2 fins that are on the bottom. These, if you are doing the Thunderbird model, they shouldn't go on at all until after your decals are applied. So I did paint these here, but I figured that out after the fact. There are also a couple of other videos on YouTube that do explain this. I'm telling you now, don't put these on until afterwards. The only thing you'll want to paint is that tail hook that is in the middle, and I had to do that a couple of times. It doesn't even need a lot. Right there is probably all you need. You can see that might even be too much. My paint cracked on it, which was bad. On a side note, these fins, they actually broke off quite easily, which may have been a good thing or not, but here they are. I'll have to scrape away some of the paint on these, but this is the best way to paint them, and don't put these on the model until after you put on those finishing decals that go on the bottom of this plane. We want it to look good, and this is the best way to do it because those decals won't go on right if these fins are already on the model. Here I am repainting the tail hook again after I painted this white. This is still way too much area to even paint blue on this. It doesn't have to be a lot. This also cracked yet again. I'm going to show you that right here. There it is. Not good. I just worked the blue in there over and over and over again until it looked really good. Most of this gets covered by the decal anyway, so you're not even going to see it. Here is the canopy. Like I said, just take away the tape from this. Once you take away all the tape from this, it's ready to be put on the model. On a side note, the model tended to lift up. Once I put the canopy on it, the model sat flat. You may want to put some putty in the nose cone. I never did that, but those are things you find out later. Here's the canopy going on. Maybe a good idea to leave that paper towel in there. For our latest videos, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like. Stay tuned for part 3.